This story begins with a bloody battle. A warrior emperor named Ilcheon participated. There were many warriors against him. However, they didn't even realize that this man's name was Ilcheon, because he was the only one who united the vastness of Hwang Island under his rule. He was called emperor because his skill reached to the very heavens. He could easily seize luxury, gold, or even power. There was nothing that could not belong to the emperor himself. In the cave, through the opening through which the moonlight peered, the question of why was voiced. A bald man appeared in front of him who didn't understand why on earth this guy had dropped everything and left. The unexpected appearance startled Ilcheon. The bald man was obviously crazy. It looked like he had decided to blind the emperor with his bald head early in the morning. Does he really think there is a person in the world who became bald of his own volition? He should immediately apologize to all the bald people in this country. The guy replied that it's not even about his baldness. The problem is that he's standing there reflecting the light. The bald man didn't want to listen to this meaningless chatter. He should apologize. Ilcheon wished he would get out of here with his blinding baldness. After which, the bald man again told him to apologize. The protagonist replied that he would apologize to every bald man in the country, but not to this idiot. He found this guy to be cruel. Even before he leaves, Ilcheon still can't make himself even a little bit kinder, but he was just telling the truth. The bald man turned away, for he could not believe that he would stand his ground until the very end. The bald man again inquired as to why he had decided to leave. He has nothing to regret, and life ahead of him is not a life of regret, but of pleasure. The protagonist revealed that he has aspirations greater than mere pleasure. The bald man only grinned, saying that someone would be surprised because of the nonsense he was talking here. He covered the boy with the pelt of a 1,000-year-old Imuga. The bald man asked the protagonist who, besides himself, could have obtained such a miracle. The legendary Pang Tao, who only descended to the world of the living once every 1,000 years. No one could defeat Pang Tao except Ilcheon. Only the warrior Emperor Ilcheon possesses these wonders of the world. Therefore, he should appreciate it. He couldn't even imagine that there was anything more valuable than this in the world. The protagonist didn't even realize since when did the great monk of the Black Mountain become such a chatty person. Could it be that he really regretted leaving? He replied that it was nonsense. Ilhan will survive just fine without him. The monk of the Black Mountain should be happy at all. However, the monk still wouldn't understand him. It is the loneliness of a wanderer in a strange world. The realization that he would never see his family again. His family. Before he could fully finish his sentence, the monk interrupted him, saying that it was none of his business. He displayed the last artifact. He also prepared to ask the last question. Does the emperor really have no regrets? What he built will never belong to him again. A smile appeared on his face, and he stated that he regretted nothing. He wants to come back, whatever it takes. Namely home to a planet called Earth. That was his wish. And he, who is the greatest dark sorcerer of the Hwang country, will give the boy what he desires. He called him Yang Su-hyuk and asked him to get ready. Everything that once belonged to him will become the warlock's property. Yang Su-hyuk only chuckled, calling him crazy. However, he had one last thing he wanted to say to this madman, but his mind went blank. After that, the guy woke up. He didn't realize where he was or if the Black Mountain monk's magic had worked. It really couldn't not work, and if it didn't work, he'd find the fucking wizard and polish his bald head to the bone. But suddenly he looked around and realized he was in a hospital. Could this be the ground? After that, he noticed the Hangle. After all, he did manage to come back. As soon as he tried to rise, he was struck with unbearable pain. Would he die again, even though he had just returned? His body is in a terrible state. There's no way that a couple days in the hospital would make him so infirm. The monk of the Black Mountain would be sure to bring the lad back to the very moment he left the earth. But it looks like the monk messed up big time with the precision of the moment. He was mad at that crazy wizard. In this condition, the guy can't even stand up. He would have to recover first. Yang Su-hyuk realized that he needed to apply the technique and the sacred source of the earth. The sacred earth source technique is a meditation technique that was developed by Yang Su-hyuk in the Hwang world. It is very effective and enhances health and even restores beauty to the body. He assigned to inhale that energy. His body began to accumulate this energy within himself. The once weakened muscles she brought back to their original state. Slowly, but the technique was rebuilding his organs. Afterward, the boy opened his eyes. They were shining with a violet light. Afterward, he tried to stretch. The intense pain was no longer binding his body. He saw the result of the sacred earth source technique in the mirror. This technique really works wonders. It's not true. The guy's like a reborn man. And now it's time to get a nurse. He wanted to touch the call button that was beside the bed. Suddenly, a message from the Force system appeared before his eyes. There, the guy was called awakened and also told that he had to protect humanity. He could not believe his eyes. This event shocked him greatly. The system reported that he had mastered an rank A skill called Sacred Earth Source Technique. He even slapped himself in the face, for he thought he had just lost his mind. The pain was real, which meant it wasn't a dream and everything was really happening. He mentally cursed the Black Mountain monk. After all, Yang Soo-hyuk had asked him to bring him to the earth at the very moment he had left it. It's really kind of a mockery. The system showed a statistics window, so it said that there was a system error and the stabilization process was started. His profession is a master of martial arts. Due to long inactivity, the user received a disability. The accumulated karma value is many times higher than that of people of the same age and race. Looking at the whole thing, he realized that it didn't look like magic at all. Of course, no Q could create such an illusion. He even wondered if the monk of the Black Mountain had screwed up so badly that he had sent the protagonist to a world only superficially similar to Earth. But even if that's true, there's a new question. Why is Yang Soo-hyuk's birth date the same? Now he realized that he was definitely on Earth. It would be embarrassing to have that glowing thing sticking out in front of his eyes like that. He mentally told it to disappear. Then, as if on command, the system window disappeared. This illusion seems to obey his words. Yang Soo-hyuk wanted to check his hunch once more and called out to the system. The blue window appeared in front of his eyes again, and as soon as he told the system to disappear, the window disappeared. He felt like he was in a movie or a game of some kind. But only one thing is clear now. The world he used to live in has definitely changed. He saw the doors open and there were nurses wanting to come into his room, chatting happily. Soo-hyuk decided to ask what had happened to him. As soon as he turned to the nurses, there was genuine shock on their faces. None of them had obviously expected the awakening of the protagonist. Soo-hyuk didn't understand what was wrong with these nurses either. What's wrong with a patient waking up? The other nurse immediately wanted to call the doctor. A little later, the doctor checked that the pupil response to light was normal. The man then asked if the patient had any complaints of feeling or pain, or perhaps some discomfort. Soo-hyuk replied that there was nothing wrong and he was healthy. The doctor thought it was incredible, because his body didn't seem to be affected in any way. He casually mentioned that it had been 5 years since the portals had been opened. There's no way he expected to be in a coma for 5 whole years. The doctor told me that this did happen, whereupon he began to write something down. He tried to put the information together and even tried to figure out what year it was if it had already been 5 years. The doctor replied that it was the year 2028. He started cursing the old man from the Black Mountain again. He had said that he would make the time to the minute. Meanwhile, the Black Mountain monk, who had never uttered a word of truth in his entire life, could only laugh at being believed. He would strangle that monk himself if he came back. The doctor was sure that the patient had many questions now, but his health came first. He asked the protagonist to rest and then they could socialize again. The nurse also realized that Soo-hyuk was shocked, but he should try to stay calm. She also said that they had contacted his relative who would be coming soon. He was immediately surprised by the words about a relative. The nurse said that she has been coming to see the patient almost every day for all these years. She loves him very much. Soo-hyuk inquired if she had said when she was coming. It's been an hour since they called her back. She'll probably be here soon. Then a young girl came into the room. She was trying to catch her breath, for she must have run here very fast. The nurse cheerfully announced that the patient's younger sister had arrived, and also the one who is his guardian. She immediately walked over to the main character's bunk and couldn't believe her brother had actually come to his senses. Soo-hyuk. Ask her who she's talking to. He's not a ghost. He remembers Sua, who was just a little girl, and now she's all grown up. Now she realized it was really her brother. He's awake and even talking to her. Soo-hyuk chuckled and pinched his cheek, confirming that he was real. He even acknowledged everything, that it was so amazing to see her as an adult. Without further ado, she immediately hugged him. You could hear her whimpering. She missed her big brother very much. The nurse asked the caregiver to keep a low profile, as the patient was still very weak. Soo-hyuk only waved his hand, letting him know that everything was fine. Sua was afraid he would never regain consciousness. The girl thought she would never see him conscious again in her life. He tried to reassure her by talking about how they are now together. The protagonist also apologized for making her wait so long. It was a warm reunion between brother and sister, witnessed by the nurse. She wiped her tears with tissues and asked how he was feeling. Usually, if a person came to their senses after falling through a portal, they felt unbearable pain. Soo-hyuk showed that he's really okay. She knows him. He doesn't want to be sick for a long time and he can't. She asked her brother to stop bragging. What if the pain came back? Soo Hyuk asked what kind of pain there could be when she had just hugged him so tightly that he could barely breathe. He also wondered if she was ashamed to do that to her sick brother. Sua explained that she hadn't done it on purpose. She forgot herself with the joy of seeing him come to his senses. Of course he understood. He also remembered her words about the portal, so he asked what that meant. The realization came into her head that her brother couldn't possibly know about the portal. 5 years ago, in the year 2023, disaster struck. It was like an earthquake of great destructive power, after which portals to other worlds began to appear. Some portals led to safe worlds, but others were very dangerous. The dangerous measures became known as dungeons. Scary monsters live in these worlds. Simultaneously with the opening of the portal, people with superpowers, called awakened ones, began to appear. In the last 5 years, the world has changed beyond recognition. The moment the first portals opened is now referred to as the portal incident. He really had a hard time believing in monsters, awakened ones, and the portal incident in general. Sua said not to worry about it. Soo Hyuk will be discharged and then he'll catch up gradually. He remembered that the system window had said something about an awakened one. It seemed to have something to do with it. When he was discharged, he wanted to find out more about it. And until they knew better, not to tell anyone about the system window yet. He didn't even know if the system was dangerous or not. The girl wondered what he was thinking so deeply about. Soo Hyuk inquired if she was now in college. The girl awkwardly averted her gaze, indicating that she hadn't acted. This news shocked him, because the girl had always been an excellent student. I wonder if it was because of him. As it turned out, she was just bored with her studies and wanted to start earning. Soo Hyuk didn't even know if he should pretend that he didn't understand. From the expression on her face alone, he could tell that she was lying. Sua asked me not to think she was lying. It's the truth. She also said that Mom and Dad should be arriving soon. She wondered how long it would take them to get there. Soo Hyuk realized that she was just trying to change the subject. For now, Soo Hyuk could assume that he believed her. The girl said again that she wasn't lying. Soon he would really see his mother and father. He'd even forgotten that he had a good relationship with his mother. But things were much worse with his father. By profession, my father was what people call a writer, poet, novelist, literary critic. The man told his son that he would be done soon, and then he would play with him. He only needed to wait a little while. The child agreed. But what is life like for the usually mediocre writer? It's a life on the edge of poverty. Soo Hyuk hated how poor they were. He was even a little angry with his father. The father heard his son's voice and said, "Wait a little while," for he wanted to make dinner. Soo Hyuk only angrily asked if he would be typing these useless texts for a long time. Isn't he ashamed to live like this? How much longer is he going to invest such an existence? The man replied that writing is just a hobby for him. And tonight he goes to another job. He asked me not to take that into my head and suggested we eat. He would make rice and curry. However, he wanted nothing, for he was very tired already. A man tried to stop him, but eventually my father gave up on his dream of becoming a writer. He called Soo Hyuk and Sua, for he had brought a chicken. The man noticed that his son was going somewhere. He also asked if Soo Hyuk was going to have lunch with them. Soo Hyuk replied that he was going to a party at a friend's house. Of course he understands this, because you need to maintain relationships with your friends. He also asked his son if he needed money. He put some money aside just in case, and Mom doesn't know about it. Let him buy himself something nice at the restaurant. But the guy just wouldn't accept the money. He said to keep the money. Dad's money's tight enough as it is. So why is he trying to give me pocket money? It's just unthinkable. After which he said traumatized words, to the effect that if he hadn't been in that family, they might have been quite happy. He'd better not try to make up for lost time. Soo Hyuk was a complete idiot back then. Haman, and not the best person. He thought that his son probably needed that money. It seemed like he should have thought about it a lot sooner. If he had known then that he was seeing his father for the last time, he might have acted differently. But most likely he wouldn't have. Soo Hyuk was too immature to realize the consequences. It was then that he noticed the portal that opened up all behind him. He didn't realize what it was at all, after which he noticed his father running towards him. That image is forever etched in his memory. After he woke up in Hwang country, he regretted every day, even now, how he had treated his father. Dreaming of his return, he wanted above all to apologize to his father. But 5 years had passed. His parents walked into him. They had a look of shock on their faces. They couldn't believe that their son had actually woken up. The woman immediately walked over to her son, not believing that he had really come to his senses. a little confused, but he pronounced himself conscious now. His sister and mother rejoiced and also began to cry. It was a great joy for them. His mother was afraid that he would never come to his senses again, whereupon he heard his father question her about his well-being. He asked with a sort of peacefulness on his face if he had any pain. Afterwards, the man apologized to his son. Soo Hyuk was right. The father should have earned more money so that he could be treated better by the people around him, but he couldn't do that. Tears appeared in the main character's eyes. In fact, he was the one who had to apologize to his father. It was his fault. Father always cared about his family's happiness, but Soo Hyuk said such horrible words. He really was a villain. While he was unconscious, not a day went by without regretting it. He apologized to his father again, promising that he would never speak to him that way again. Father and son embraced in a sign of reconciliation. Even Sua held on and tried not to cry completely, for she didn't understand. And since when had her bully brother become so kind? But she couldn't contain herself. It was so good that she didn't even know whether to laugh or cry. Soo Hyuk asked his sister what she was saying. The mother said that the son himself should know that this girl sometimes doesn't know what she's saying. The father was supportive, saying that she was just happy. Soo Hyuk realized that apparently she had become even weirder. Sup got angry and wanted to hit Soo Hyuk. In response, the protagonist reminded him that he was still a patient. When he decided to come back, he made the right decision. The happiness he was looking for was actually very close by. 3 days later, Soo Hyuk checked himself out of the hospital. The doctor was puzzled. He kept asking how Soo Hyuk was able to recover so quickly. After all, it was natural that a person who had just come out of a coma and would be very weak and sick. He even asked if the protagonist was accidentally awakened. But for now, the guy decided not to talk about it. He doesn't know anything at all about this world and can't spread it to the first person he meets. But there is a silver lining. Because the doctor was very interested in his ability to heal himself, he agreed to reimburse half of the cost of treatment and asked me to come for an appointment every month. I guess you could say that when he woke up, he had already fulfilled his filial duty to his parents. But in fact, he owes his parents a debt of gratitude. Actually, it's all thanks to his sacred source earth technique. But still, he greatly relieved the financial burden of his parents, whereupon the girl informed me that this is where they lived. He just couldn't believe that this was their home. His sister confirmed that they lived in the apartment on the 2nd floor. It's a long story, but to make a long story short, they had to move here based on the stories of my sister. She also added that mom and dad are rarely here, so Soo Hyuk can have one of the rooms. After that, Soo Hyuk wanted to give him the password to the castle. He remembered that even though they had always lived poor, this was too much. Did all of this happen because of him alone? Apparently, the hospital billboards have dragged his family to the financial bottom. He was designed to be in the mood to make money as soon as possible and as much as possible. All this he would do for the sake of his family. In this new world, there is no more obvious way to get rich quick. He needs to become a hunter. The protector class certainly has great respect and glory, for they protect humanity. But hunters make a lot more money. But there's a problem. Soo Hyun's body is in such a state that it is very early for him to even dream of this profession. As soon as he ran for a while, he was already exhausted. And the reason was that his blood was 90% infected. As the system reported, his body was underpowered. It is said that some monsters are easy to kill. However, what will he do if he gets injured? It could cost him his life, so he'll train until he gains confidence in his abilities. Blood contamination level is 89.9%. The system also added that the body is lacking strength due to the long stay in a coma. Fortunately, the infection can be defeated by ordinary training, and now he only needs to make an effort. What's more, he is a martial artist after all. After all, the guy practiced hard every day. Stair running and Mabu pose were the simplest and most effective exercises he had learned in the Burram. So he set out on the path. But the truth is, the pace of recovery leaves a lot to be desired. It's not enough. The protagonist realized that he needed a drastic change. While Soo Hyuk was in the hospital, his family worked hard. Even if it's hard, he has to overcome himself. Soo Hyuk must become a hunter in the next few days. The guy engaged the sacred source earth technique. This technique is the greatest among the meditation techniques in Hwang country. It is known for its effectiveness, but it also has a hidden bonus, namely the potential of the awakened one. Pushing the boundaries of the possible, he draws on the energy of nature and is reborn anew. However, pushing the boundaries of what is possible for one's body is incredibly difficult. Only 3 people in the entire Hwang country know about this technique. He probably wants too much. But Soo-hyuk won't get anywhere if he doesn't want too much. The protagonist is determined in becoming a better person. Meanwhile, the old guy was complaining that they should have moved him to the flat part of town. His knees are killing him. After which, the main character rushed past him. Seems like young people have nowhere to put their energy. I wish he were 10 years younger. He must not stop. He must not rest. He must not give up. Soo-hyun will reach his goal. The most important thing is not to stop at one place. If he overcomes that internal barrier, it's worth any effort. Because in Murim he was called Ilcheon, the emperor of martial arts. He even mentally asked the Black Mountain monk if he was right in his conclusions. Every day and every night she would make up laps on the stairs. The neighbors also noticed that this kid had been running in circles all day. They assumed that he must have been sick with something. They didn't even know who he was, but he was clearly impressive. The man even complained that his son, who plays on the computer every day, better be like him. Well, he could use a jogging machine himself. Said the man told him to watch his language. He doesn't have much time left. Just a little bit. He took another breath. Soo-hyun felt that he was already close to the limit. He doesn't have much left, so he can't give up. And then he can overcome the barrier. The system reported being impressed with the indomitable spirit of the awakened one. Afterward, she reported that a unit had been added to strength and stamina. Soo-hyun felt that he had become stronger. After which, the hidden bonus of the sacred earth source technique was activated. The user had reached awakening. He had broken the 3-star barrier. Blood contamination, 30%. The system responds to the strong will of the awakened one. She also reported that he had leveled up. Soo-hyuk was now at the 2nd level. His stamina has been restored 100% and all injuries have been extracted. He ran to the top. The boy shouted happily. Soo-hen knew that he would succeed. The system expressed its respect to the awakened man. Practicing the sacred earth source technique carried over a new skill called iron bones. The system rewarded the awakened with a special attribute of willpower. The system will always maintain it. Now he can finally be a hunter. The next day, he wanted to come early in the morning, but he had to register his abilities first, and that took a long time. The hunter registration office is on the 3rd floor. To him, the very notion of superpowers seems unrealistic. Superpowers that appear on their own without practicing martial arts or magic. Maybe that's why the system window remained blank until this morning. His only superpower that the system determines is the sacred earth source technique. Soo-hyun developed it by himself, but the protagonist learned that hunters must have at least 3 superpowers. So he quickly became skilled in martial arts. That's why he quickly became skilled in martial arts. He had 6 A-rank techniques. The sacred earth source technique, iron fist technique, wind kick, ghost shadow grip, heavenly demon fencing, exorcist spear, and 1 A+ rank technique, hurricane step. Soo-hyun was really just experimenting and ended up with so many abilities. But it doesn't matter. For someone who wants to get rich quick, standing out is what he must do. The man complained that he had a lot of testing to do today, and most of the people being tested turned out to be ordinary people, without any abilities. He was approached by the main character, who informed him that he was here for a superpower test. The man only sighed and said to put his hand on this ball. If it begins to emit light, it means that this person is awakened. If not, then he is not awakened and can leave this place. There seem to be a lot of people signing up for the test who are convinced they have the ability, but are actually wrong. However, he is quite confident, because the system itself is communicating with him. The balloon began to sparkle. The man was a little surprised at the awakened man in front of him, but he congratulated their main character. He wanted to start the registration. He asked me to fill out this questionnaire. Soo-hyun didn't expect it to be that simple. The apparatus simply confirmed that it had magic, and that was it. After a while, the guy filled out a questionnaire. A look of disbelief appeared on his face. The protagonist had level 1 and registered as many as 42 abilities. Soo-hyun asked if it was forbidden. He sighed, explaining that it wasn't forbidden. It just doesn't happen that way. Of course he understood that the man was glad to be an awakened one, but there was no need to play a trick on anyone here. Soo-hyun also thought it was a bit much, but is there really no such thing at all? And yet for some reason, the man wouldn't take his word for it. The protagonist asked if he could switch the system to visible mode and show that as proof of his words. The man replied that of course he could do that. However, he did not understand at all what it would change. After which, many abilities appeared before his eyes. He noticed that this person really had more than 10 abilities. In addition, they were all A rank, and even higher. Soo-hyun asked if he was convinced of the truth of his words. The man replied that he had, so he offered to formalize it as soon as possible. He apologized sincerely for not believing the young man in front of him. The man with red hair then asked if the information was accurate. The man confirmed, for he had seen it all with his own eyes. It's been a while since they've had an interesting specimen like Yang Soo-hyuk. Meanwhile, the protagonist was practicing again. He felt like his heart was going to explode over the run from the association straight to his house. It added one to endurance. But the rewards from the damn system are still pretty good. Looks like you're gonna give him diabetes. Soo-hyuk thought he could immediately start his job as a hunter, but it was a long way off as it turned out. A hunter is required to take a training course. The state created a training program to avoid wasted, careless deaths in dungeons. The hunter training course begins on the last day of the month, and today is October 26th. That leaves him 5 days. Soo-hyuk would like to opt out of this course, but it's mandatory. So for now, he will train hard so that he will be in better shape by the time the course starts. He will do it for his family and himself. 5 days flew by really quickly. The protagonist counted that there were 50 people here. He really didn't expect there to be so many people here. Soo-hyuk had heard that people didn't try hard to get into this profession because it was dangerous to life. It's not really his concern. He noticed that some energy had just flashed past him. They heard a woman's voice saying that 48 people had gathered, after which she appeared in front of them and asked for their attention. Some people were even surprised that there was an elven woman in front of them. The girl thought she was very beautiful. Could it really be a real elf? When Soo-hyuk noticed her, she had already appeared at that spot. He lost all his concentration and didn't feel it until it was too late. It was clear that it wasn't just speed. It must be something else. He even assumed it was some special elven ability. Either way, it's pretty interesting. Understandably, she turned her attention to the protagonist. The association had asked for her to take a closer look at him after all. Even with only a level 1, this guy still managed to sense her presence in energy form for a second. Even among the gifted elves, she had not encountered such a thing. It was very intriguing. People whispered about someone seeing a real elven woman for the first time. But even seeing it with your own eyes, it's hard to believe. But it's still very beautiful. She greeted the students. The elfess then explained that the Korean government had sent her to teach this course for a novice hunter. As it turns out, this elf's name is Shahar Kaliluriat, and she is a warrior from Elvenheim. She will be teaching the Earthlings. They may refer to her as Instructor Ball. For convenience and brevity, he thought the name sounded like a name for a puppy, which was really cute. The girl mentally thought that she was very beautiful. How could she be so beautiful in reality? This guy with a snake tattoo on his arm just watched silently. It was the first time an elf was taking part in an educational program on this planet. She was sure they had a lot of questions. But they don't have much time to get to know each other. So she would only take 3 questions. She really wanted to ask her question. The main character seemed to be a middle school girl. The balloon instructor really liked her enthusiasm, so she inquired about this girl's name. Becky Young introduced herself and also mentioned that she was 19 years old as well. Others seemed to dislike the idea of even letting children into these courses. He confirmed his hunch that she was indeed from high school. The instructor was pleased to meet Becky Young, after which she asked to ask her question. She shouted happily that she was such a beautiful girl. Besides, Yeon had never seen even an elf girl so beautiful before. She was a little perplexed by these words. Yi-young only looked embarrassed and laughed awkwardly. The balloon instructor sighed and said her manner of speaking was rather interesting. She raises her hand to ask a question, but instead compliments her looks. She is the first among the sword masters of the Kaliluriat family. As such, she prefers to be seen not just as a woman, but above all, as a warrior. Whereupon the instructor told the next one to ask his question. Some of the people raised their hands, but she chose the man with the tattoo. He was the first to raise his hand so he can ask his question. He stared at his tattoo and thought he had fallen behind fashion. Somehow he thought that decent people didn't have tattoos like that. This man's name is Jin Jang-hyuk, and the question may seem very strange. He asked if felons can take this course. He had read that it was allowed with the consent of the instructor. The balloon instructor wondered what crime this man had been convicted of. He averted his so-so gaze from her, talking about committing a small theft. She doesn't approve of stealing, but the ball instructor promises that he will be treated the same as any of the students, and no one has to remember his misstep. In Elvenheim, offenders are given a choice. They can either serve the people or defend the homeland. Jin Chan-hyuk has shown that she wants to protect the motherland by coming here. She calls it Lang Dare, and on Earth it's a kind of repentance with honor. Jang Hyuk has stumbled, so he'll have to try harder than the others. But he must never forget that the law has begun. He should remember that and act with integrity. Sin can't be erased, but that doesn't mean you can't be forgiven for it. Jang Hyuk thanked the elfess and also said that he understood her. After which it was the turn for the last question. She noticed a hand that was raised quite quickly. The instructor inquired about the person's name. It was Yang Soo-hyuk. The balloon instructor said she knows, since they've been revisiting them for a while now. Others have started gossiping that the two seem to know each other. However, that doesn't seem to be true. He was a little uncomfortable at the word that he was being looked at. The instructor asked if that was his question. The boy shook his head, indicating that he had a different question. Namely, whether she was the only instructor for this entire group. The instructor responded that no, but she understands what the question is about. She is indeed the main instructor, but she can't teach them all the subjects herself. So she will have assistants, namely Earthlings. But in combat training, she alone will teach the lessons. The protagonist responded that he understood that. So she's kind of like a principal in a school, but also a classroom teacher on an action movie. It's pretty interesting. The instructor said that they could ask other questions in the next class, and just as she wanted to move on to the next stage, she was stopped. Personally, he doesn't trust me as an elf. She looked at him with some contempt. He looked at the others and wondered if he was right. She's not even human after all. So why should she teach them? Past instructors had a rank that was confirmed by the association, and she doesn't have that rank. And he highly doubts she's capable of anything in combat with her looks. He even thought it looked like she was hunting for anything but combat. Since he wants proof, he'll get it now. After which, the elfess attacked the man with her power. He covered himself with his hand, wanting to protect himself from that blow. But it was a devastating attack that struck all the people standing near him. They were bewildered, and didn't realize what it had just been. People could not move, and this man who was convulsively grabbing his throat couldn't even breathe. The instructor recognized that it is legitimate to demand proof. However, subordination is equally important. There will be no more warnings. She realizes it's possible to underestimate the situation. Well, if it happens again, there'll be no mercy. This fear even made the man wet his pants. But her attention was caught by the main character who was firmly on his feet, the people around him already lying down. She couldn't believe that everyone had fallen off their feet and he was even able to endure. But this is a level 1 who hasn't even smelled gunpowder. How is that even possible? There was a reason she'd been told this guy was worth watching. He could be sent on a dungeon raid right now. Soo-hyuk felt like it came out awkwardly. Perhaps he should have pretended to fall down with everyone else. This is a clear example that willpower and ability are not the same thing. So she shouldn't jump to conclusions. We need to observe him. At last their bodies began to obey, and people were able to stand up. Some even had back pain. It was a marvelous introduction. The instructor really hoped that these recruits would not make her angry during the training. After which, she turned around to leave, saying that they would see each other at the next class. Today in class they will be studying a monster similar to the feline family. Maybe it's been too long since he's studied, because he can't even concentrate. He really wanted to get down to business already. The balloon instructor noticed that he was yawning, so she decided to shake it with a light breeze. Whenever he's distracted for a moment, she brings him to his senses. She didn't seem to want him distracted at all. He certainly understands the instructor, but Soo-hyuk has never been known for being plodding. After that, he noticed Chan-hek's gaze on him. And as soon as the main character's attention was drawn to him, he immediately turned his head away. Jang Hyuk was a little surprised that this guy was able to notice. We have to pretend that nothing is going on. Soo-hyuk assumed that this guy wanted to write him off. The main character didn't even expect Jang Hyuk to be so shy. And again the wind blew at him. The instructor turned her attention to Cadet Yang Soo-hyuk and asked him to stay focused on listening to the material. Still about the setting and adamant instructor. And the main character even suggested that they wouldn't have a good relationship. The teacher was finishing his lecture and also told the guys to reread their notes later. Otherwise, they risked failing the exam. The students were all crabby. Yet they agreed with the teacher's words. The teacher wept. For in his entire career, he had never met such grateful and attentive students. If everyone were like that, the world would be a better place. The instructor also saw the teacher's good mood. Soo-hyuk was also approached by Yen, who greeted the crowd. He recognized this schoolgirl immediately. Ilcheon immediately mentioned that she is a student. After saying that, he remembered that she was 19. And that's what Yeon herself had said yesterday. Still, she didn't really like being perceived as a schoolgirl. The protagonist inquired as to what she wanted. The balloon instructor was making everyone pay attention, and Soo-hyuk was the only one who could stand up to her. The guy didn't even realize that she would be able to notice it. Under such magical pressure, Yi Yen couldn't have the strength to look around. Joining them in the conversation was Jang Hyuk, who also noticed it, and he admitted that it was unbelievable. Yi Yong asked the man if his heart was made of steel or what. How on earth was he able to withstand such an impulse? Soo Hyuk only sighed, saying that he had a heart like her own. He was just lucky. The girl replied that she was seriously asking. Jang Hyuk thought it was cool that he was also humble. Soo Hyuk asked if that was the reason he'd been looking in his direction the whole class. Jang Hyuk apologized, saying that he was just amazed at his ability. No need to make excuses like that. Maybe these two aren't as bad as he thought they were in the beginning. Yi Yen suggested that we have lunch together at a cafe. They seemed to be the only ones who asked the instructor a question. Namely, the three questioners. But Soo Hyuk refused, saying that they could go without him. Yi Yong thought it was unfair. He's using his powers to get away from them. Jang Hyuk was impressed with the main character, because he has a lot of charisma. And Yen was a little confused as to why this man was so unsociable. Theoretical classes will run for 30 days. Something cannot be taken away or added to this period of study. This is the policy of the Ministry of Education. He wants to finally pass the exam and get into combat training. Surprisingly, a huge percentage of cadets fail the exam and drop out at this stage. Soo Hyuk must study hard. The instructor keeps them from relaxing all the time. But for some reason, the instructors on the theoretical part of the course are convinced that their flow will be extraordinarily successful. However, this does not mean that every single person will get credit. The exam is not that difficult, but you still need to study. Yi Young told him that if he failed the theory exam, a curse would fall on him and he would never be able to take the exam again. Soo Hyuk replied that he had heard that. She didn't understand how this could be at all. I guess the crowd could even feel her heart clench with fear. Soo Hyuk thought about her being a small actress. He also replied that maybe it's just not worth it to fail the exam. Besides, he doesn't believe that. People probably don't get credit for some other real reason. She wondered what that reason was. Soo Hyuk turned his attention to the people talking nearby. The guys were chatting merrily about not going to the next class better to eat. Some of them even offered to have a drink. They didn't understand why they had to cram all this now, because they could leave it for the last days of the exam. Yi Yong noticed their attitude as well. Afterward, Soo Hyuk said that he would go and advised her not to skip the extra class. She didn't like the fact that this man was as cold as a block of ice. That is indeed a valid reason, but he has to devote his free time to his family first and foremost. After all, this is the happiness he has only fought long and hard for. And now he will value his family above all else. It didn't take long for a month to pass, and it was time for the exam. Jang Hyuk was very nervous. They would know the test results by the end of the day. Yeon replied that her heartbeat is also very slow. Chan Hek asked perplexedly, "Does he have to say it out loud? He's nervous enough as it is." The girl wondered if what she was saying was making him nervous. The guy looked away nervously, confirming her hunch. She started circling around him, talking about how her heart is pounding really fast. It's doing a knock knock knock. After that, Jang Hyuk started chasing after Baek Yi Young. At the same time, Soo Hyuk told them to be quiet, because the results had come in. They immediately stopped fighting. After that, the table had the names of the students who had passed the exam. All three of them passed. Baek Yi Young even managed to place with a high score. She was glad she had gotten the credit. Besides, all three of them could do it. He thought she was counting crows in class. The boy didn't understand how she managed to get the highest score. Yi Young revealed that she studied diligently, but in a way that no one would notice. He only laughed awkwardly, saying that he understood everything. This was absurd. Jang Hyuk even started crying because he was really able to pass the exam. Finally, he can show his brothers that he's good for something. Yang Soo Hyuk and Baek Yi Young were also happy for his success. Jin Jang Hyuk is marginalized at first glance, but deep down he's a normal guy. Soo Hyuk had been watching him for the whole course and noticed that he was very diligent in his studies. That's why they got almost the same grade. He also learned about his life. Jang Hyuk raised her three younger brothers alone. The father died of an addiction to alcohol. The mother, who could not stand the beatings from living with an alcoholic, had long ago disappeared from their lives in an unknown direction. So from his sophomore year of high school, he actually took on the role of the head of the family. Jang Hyuk grew up in a dysfunctional environment, which even affected his appearance. But he's not a bad guy. He's actually responsible and reliable. Jang Hyuk committed a theft to feed his brothers and went to jail for it. But when he came back, he started working and paid all his debts to his family. This alone characterizes him as a good man. Soo-hyuk replies that this guy has been through a lot just like him. He knows that Jong-hyuk likes to act more than sit at a desk. He told him to try his best, and then he'll succeed. Jang-hyuk wiped his tears and thanked Soo-hyuk. Soo-hyuk wondered what he had done. Jang-hyuk did everything on his own. He just saw how hard the main character was trying, and decided to try harder himself. And he thanked him again. Soo-hyuk only sighed, saying that there was no need to flatter him. He might as well not even try to do so. Yi-young congratulated the two, and also mentioned that they would now finally move on to combat training. Still, Yeon helped him a lot too. She stayed late in class and explained all the material she had learned to Jang Haeok. That girl must have been difficult for him, and Yeon replied that comrades needed to be helped out. Soo-hyuk didn't even expect that this schoolgirl helped him study. This means that she's not as silly as she seems from the beginning. After that, Chanhek got a call back, and he told me that he had gotten credit. He said he could do it. And now they'll have a new and better life. Soo-hyuk was sorry to bring him back to reality, but there were still a lot of difficulties ahead. Jang-hyuk promised to buy them some fried chicken. He also noticed that out of 49 people, only 42 received a passing grade. As far as he knew, about half of the class usually dropped out. Though kicking and screaming, the ball instructor got them through those exams. She must be a really outstanding teacher. They didn't even hope that they would get a passing grade. The kids were happy about it. Combat training begins next week. The week went by like a blink of an eye. The balloon instructor welcomed everyone here to the meeting. She introduced herself again, and also mentioned that she was the leader of the 8th group. But these guys already know who she is. Jang-hyuk and Baek Yi-young clapped enthusiastically. Soo-hyuk clapped too, but he did it less joyfully. He admitted that it was really incredible because they had come such a long way together, and on top of that they were put on the same team. The instructor said that she personally distributed the flow into groups. After all, people with the same interests interact better with each other. But the leader of this group of instructors was appointed by fate itself. One could say that their destinies were joined by the world tree. Yi-young believed that it was indeed fate, but she warned these kids not to expect her to take pity on them in the first class. They immediately felt the pressure that came from the instructor. Looks like this elf girl decided to establish discipline right away. Now he had a feeling that they would finally get into a real fight. The balloon instructor announced that they will go to the portal. She also asked Jin Chang-hyuk to tell her what a portal was. The guy replied that it was an entrance to other worlds. He was right, but not all portals are the same. The instructor asked Yang Soo-hyuk if he remembered what the group went through the last week before the exam. Soo-hyuk explained that portals fall into two broad categories. Portals to friendly worlds and portals to hostile worlds. Hostile measures have degrees from 1 to 13. The higher the degree of the portal, the more dangerous it is. These guys were very inattentive in class, but she is pleased that they were actually able to learn everything. And today they are going into the hostile portal of the 1st degree. Yi-young liked the idea. The balloon instructor asked Baek Yi-young what a 1st degree portal was. The girl happily told me that it was inhabited by the least dangerous monsters. Also, there are not very many of them, so such portals are suitable for training beginners. The instructor asked if this meant that such a portal would be easy to clear. The girl blurted out that it would be very easy. The instructor's facial expression changed, and she asked if they really thought these monsters were incapable of killing a human. The boys immediately fell silent. Soo-hyuk replied that these monsters are still as capable of killing a human. They're quite capable of killing these three, so now they're going to see something else, namely bloodthirstiness. An ominous energy enveloped the two of them, causing them to even find it difficult to breathe. But Soo-hyuk felt great even with the intimidation. She was surprised that her skill didn't work on this guy. Soo-hyuk even thought about the fact that he should have pretended. The guy really pretended like he was having a hard time too. The instructor responded that there was no need to pretend. The guys aren't used to it, but are bound to get used to the feeling. Like she said, the monsters are capable of killing them. If the monster's aggression frightens them, their chances of survival become nil. Jang-hyuk and Baek Yi-young were wary, unlike Soo-hyuk. Of course, the instructor noticed that all but one was scared. She didn't even expect the dry man to withstand this pressure, so she just had to ask that. Namely, if he'd been in combat yet. He inarticulately replied that he sort of was. The instructor replied, which is kind of a non-answer. This guy is full of mystery, but he may not reveal all his secrets. Nevertheless, to back up his words, he will have to back them up with a department as well. If they run, they will reach the Mapo subway station within an hour. Soo-hyuk asked if they would just run there. She doesn't know how to use public or private transportation, so there's no other way. Plus, they could use a little exercise before the fight. Yang Soo-hyuk is the leader of the 8th group. That's why he's going to lead the boys. They'll see each other in exactly 1 hour at the Mapo station. She then left and asked me to escort these guys to the station. There wasn't much of a choice, so Soo-hyuk suggested running. Yi-young didn't want to run. Jang-hyuk agreed. The 2 men then rushed forward. The girl shouted for them to wait for her. After a while, they arrived at the station to which they had fled. Yi-young and Jang-hyuk were trying to catch their breath after running like this. Soo-hyuk is of course used to this kind of training. The instructor didn't even expect them to get here that fast. That's a great result. The guys thought their hearts would even stop from exhaustion. Soo-hyuk remembered their fear when the instructor demonstrated the bloodthirstiness of the monster to them. But now, after the run, the body should be relaxed. Did she really intend this from the beginning? If that's true, her teaching talent is greater than he first thought. It seems she was given the job of running the state's education program for a reason. After which 10 minutes passed. The instructor asked if they were ready to go into the portal. The boys answered that they were ready. If that's the case, then they start. The name of the first stage portal at Mapo Station is Muge. Literally, it means a world without borders. While preparing for the exam, he learned something rather interesting. There are several portals called Muge. These are desert worlds that have the same name, but no one lives in them, and nothing of value lives there. However, some witnesses claim that traces of ancient, long-extinct civilizations have been found in these portals. This naturally leads to some thought. What if all of Muge are actually the sites of ancient civilizations? It's not that unlikely. This looks like it's going to be pretty interesting. Then they came out of the portal. The boys began to look around. The desert land of Muge, and saying that the temperature here averages -2 degrees Celsius. That's very cold. The instructor will give them free rein. Also, they must be careful when advancing forward. You never know where you will download a monster from. It's home to the monsters of the Narus. They are 4-legged monsters that are similar to the canine family, averaging 3 meters at the withers. Of course, the main method of attack is to bite with their powerful jaws. They have a long jump. This type of monster hunts in packs of 3 or 5. Even though they are rank 1 monsters, they can be very dangerous to newcomers. However, it won't be too difficult for him. So why is he so confident? The answer is simple. Soo-hyuk has been diligently preparing on theory and also continued training, therefore his stats have increased this month. But the most effective on the bonus effect of the Sacred Earth Source technique. Passive skill. The path and inner development of the Tao. Energy recovery rate and efficiency increased by 200% of the base rate. 20% enhancement while using martial arts. He had a hard time getting used to the system here at first. But the bonuses from the system and the bonuses from the stats were too good. So compared to his classmates, the protagonist is much stronger. If you add martial arts skill and combat experience to that, it comes out to be about 2nd, at best 1st level of skill. He was able to regain that level in just a month. Therefore, he has no reason to fear anything in the 1st-degree portal. Soo-hyuk told his group to stop, for he had noticed something. He reported that they had decided to give them a rather warm welcome. There were as many as 5 individuals in front of them. However, she didn't see it as a problem, for she was sure these guys could handle it. Most importantly, they shouldn't panic. Group 8 should prepare for battle. There's no need to attack, they just have to let them get close to them. Soo-hyuk thought it was boring. After all, he could handle them right now. But it seemed better to obey the order. He also noticed that his partners had no weapons. The association said they would provide them with weapons. Soo-hyuk prefers to fight without weapons, but don't these guys need them? The bloodthirsty wolves immediately rushed to attack. The instructor then informed them that they could begin. Thick blades emerged from Chan-hek's knuckles, and he rushed to attack. Soo-hyuk stared in surprise and wondered if he was really getting hit on by a wolverine. He glanced at Yen, then realized she was a support or possibly a healer. And now, apparently, it's his turn. The protagonist used a technique called Hurricane's Footsteps. Jang-hyuk was very surprised when he noticed that Soo-hyuk had overtaken him. Soo-hyuk really wanted to see what he could do in his current state. He nimbly managed to dodge the monster's sharp fangs. And then he promoted the palm technique, Iron Fist technique, cross-cutting attack. Another monster was thinking of attacking him from behind. He pushed himself off the ground and leaped at the monster, using a deadly kick with his foot. The wind's death. Thus, he defeated another individual. Yi-young and Jang-hyuk couldn't imagine their leader being capable of such a thing at all. The girl thought it was simply unbelievable. Even the orb instructor's face took on a tinge of ineptitude, for she didn't even believe that it was definitely a cadet. After that, another monster appeared there. Soo-hyuk turned around to see who was approaching him. Whereupon, he immediately pushed himself back at full speed towards the wolf. But all Start could do was stare fearfully at the one who was about to kill him. The protagonist used the Iron Fist technique, fractional destructive attack. The orb instructor knew she had to remain impartial, but she just couldn't look at it calmly. She even wanted to take this man back to Elvenheim. It seemed to be helped by the past experience of a martial arts master. His body was very quickly engaged in the fight. Well, of course, the system also helped him. If Soo-hyuk was in Hwang country right now, he would be among the elite warriors. And now all that was left were these two, who were already rushing at him. He'd love to do it himself. But Guy has to give others a chance to stretch themselves. For him, it's just a checkmark. But for the guys, it's a very valuable experience. Yi-young and Jang-hyuk saw the main character. He sat down. The guy was beginning to assume that Soo-hyuk wanted them to handle this on their own. In that case, they'll deal with those monsters themselves. With his ability, he was able to chop the monster in half. Afterward, Jang-hyuk heard a voice in Yeon yelling for him to turn back around. There was already a monster behind him who was getting ready to kill the guy. Nothing occurred to him but to put his elbow under that blow. After that, he stuck his steel claws right into the throat of his opponent. He didn't even realize when the thing had gotten around him. A warm, healing light began to emanate from his hands and Yen. She began to heal his wounds. He was a little shocked that his wound was completely gone. Now Soo-hyuk had confirmed his speculation that she was a Heller. That's an ability he could use. There were already 4 monsters running towards the 3 of them. They obviously didn't even want to let the guys rest. But the truth is, Soo-hyuk is already used to it. It's time to finish what he started. A little while later, they finally emerged from the dungeon. Yi-young and Jang-hyuk complained that they were too tired after this class. You can understand these guys. After all, this was their first 6-way battle. The orb instructor cheerfully praised these guys. She knew that the awakened Earthlings would not disappoint her. The kids have become not only tough but also strong. Such rapid development right during battle is almost impossible. These words were true. Yi-young as well as Jang-hyuk stopped better with each attack. Sung-hyuk, however, was originally already a martial arts master. The guy thought it was just his talent, but maybe it was even the help of the system. The instructor assumed that this team would be ready for combat missions very soon. And as their instructor, she was quite satisfied. These guys have done a good job, so they are free to go for today. Yi-yeon and Jang-hyuk were happy because they would finally be able to rest. The instructor stopped Yang Soo-hyuk, asking if she could talk to him for a few minutes. She had a feeling that his martial arts skill was not derived from the system. After all, it was much more graceful and effective. She even wondered if she was wrong in her guess. But if he is uncomfortable with the question, he may not answer it. But Soo-hyuk decided to tell me. He had indeed studied martial arts. Now her hunch was confirmed. But the dossier said that he was in a coma until recently. So it's not clear how he could have learned martial arts in just a month. It's really impossible. But the universe is big, and there may still be things even she doesn't know. Soo-hyuk wondered why on earth she was asking about that. The girl only sighed, saying that she saw him as an outstanding talent. The boy replied that he had often been told this, but it was mostly the people of Hwang country. She also noted the fact that he gave his team members their first combat experience. She put him in charge for a reason. Many people hold positions of responsibility, but not everyone behaves so naturally. Maybe it's because Yang Soo-hyuk is such a person. He's just exceptional. Unexpectedly, a blush appeared on the boy's face. He looked away embarrassed, talking about how the instructor was giving him too much credit. The girl sighed happily, indicating that she was saying it from the heart. Now, Soo-hyuk also recognized that it was not uncommon for elves, but she was still very beautiful. There weren't even beauties like this in the Hwang country. He decided to push such thoughts away from him. This wasn't the time for that. Today, it was as if they had hunted, but it was definitely not enough for him. After all, he was only recently the martial arts emperor of the Hwang country. Soo-hyuk is quickly regaining his strength, but is still very far from the top. But he shouldn't rush things now. His impatience wouldn't make a difference anyway. Everything will be in order, step by step toward his goal. On the 3rd day of training, the protagonist could almost already earn more than 10 million won a month. With the team, they cleared several level 1 and level 2 portals, and were also able to make money from the loot. Skin, teeth, and other components that are extracted from monsters in the dungeon have a price. Through this, the protagonist was able to earn about 1.5 million won. He decided not to tell his family just yet. It was never too late to tell them the news. After all, if he took the money to his family right away, he would have to tell them where he had gotten it. Yi-young noticed that the main character was somehow joyful, even in a situation like this where there were a lot of monster corpses. Soo-hyuk asked if it was really that visible. The girl replied that it was even too visible. The boy explained that the loot was worth a lot of money. He couldn't even count how many of these masters they had killed. The balloon instructor mentioned that if anyone saw them now, they would consider them dangerous. Yi Young was even a little envious, since they both were able to adjust so well, especially Yang Hyuk. And we had a hard time at first, but now he's like a fish out of water. I bet these guys are probably trying for money too. What suddenly appeared was a flying arrow that held its direction at Chang Hyun. And after all, the guy didn't suspect anything and thought that even in the portals of the second rank, it was no longer so difficult to cope. Fortunately, Soo Hyun was able to catch that arrow in time. Soo Hyun's hand that caught that arrow was trembling violently. He didn't realize what had just happened, but it was clear that this arrow did not belong to some goblin. It was a human arrow. Among the grass, 2 men crawled out. The boys saw that the 8th group had already finished. This was the 3rd team. One of its members only needed 1 goblin to level up. It was a pity they hadn't gotten here before the 8th team. After which, a girl named Jin Chae-yoon walked up to the 2 of them. Of course, she noticed the team that the balloon instructor was running. The balloon instructor also recognized the 3rd team led by Young Soo-jung. It wasn't like she hadn't requested their help in the portal. So the instructor really wanted to know what this team was doing here. Kim Cho-leek stated that they don't even need a request for help. Hunting together is always the best option. Lee Jong-guk replied that the ball instructor is no longer their instructor. Yi Yen thought those guys were obviously crazy since they didn't realize that the report didn't kill Jang Hyuk. Chae-yeon apologized, saying that she didn't do it on purpose. It's not like they killed that guy anyway. The balloon instructor got very angry, saying that they should apologize immediately. After that, Young Soo-jung, who was the instructor of the 3rd team and a member of the Amugi Guild, arrived. Instructor Young asked if she wanted to give them a lecture. She is currently an 8th team instructor, but giving instruction to all recruits is her responsibility. Soo-jung admitted that she really is as cold as ice. There's a reason they call her the flower of death in her homeland. But she has to realize that children can get dumbfounded sometimes. Chae-young laughed, saying that it was unintentional. But even if it was unintentional, she endangered someone else's life by doing so. Therefore, one should at least apologize. Moreover, interfering with someone else's portal cleanup process is a serious offense. She found this instructor to be very boring. It seems that talking to elves is always uninteresting. Soo-jung advised her not to cross the road. Ball's instructor replied that she was forgetting herself. After all, the orb is not only the instructor of the 8th team, but also the head instructor of the entire recruit training program. It was Soo-jung who was the one who crossed her path, not the other way around. Soo-jung only turned around and mentioned that it's just impossible to talk to her. She commands like an old generaless. After that, the girl agreed to leave and let them take their prey, and if she didn't like something she could safely write a complaint to the Amugi Guild. After that, Soo-jung said goodbye to them. The balloon instructor tried to stop her somehow, but these guys just ignored her screams. After which the boys returned from the portal. Jang Hyuk thanked Soo-hyuk for the save. It was kind of embarrassing for him to accept such gratitude. But if it wasn't for the main character's actions, Jang Hyuk would have been seriously injured. He also wanted to take his friend to a restaurant sometime. Soo-hyuk replied that there was no need to do that. But if he was serious, a cafe would be enough. And she didn't like being abandoned again. Last time they hadn't thought of her at all either. Those 2 couldn't even think she'd overheard them. They thought the girl had left. Yi Yen explained that she had just taken it to the restroom for a minute, and then stepped out to wait for them. Soo-hyuk apologized to her. Soo-hyuk suggested that they all go to a restaurant together. Yi Young wondered what the occasion was. She didn't mind, and since Soo-hyuk is rich today, she suggested that he should even treat them. Now the guy understood what she was getting at. The next day, they practiced in the dungeon again. The system reported a level up. His body had been refined by 40%. The efficiency of the techniques that depended on chi energy had been increased. The Ren and Du meridian had been opened, and the energy recovery rate and efficiency was increased by 200% from the baseline. He's leveling up and getting stronger and stronger. He's finally getting into the rhythm of the fight. At this rate, Soo-hyuk will soon regain his status as the first martial artist in the world. Maybe he should tell his family now. The protagonist suddenly felt something, but before he could react, another arrow destroyed the instructor balloon. She really didn't like the fact that instructor Young Soo-jung had been stopping by the 8th group's hunting grounds too often lately. Young Soo-jung came out, replying that it was a big nuisance. However, it didn't happen by accident. Chae-yeon said that she just shot that way because the instructor told her to. She didn't know that this group was here, so she apologized. The balloon instructor said these guys are provoking her, but Soo-jung thought that it was the balloon instructor who was provoking her. Yesterday, she immediately went and filed a complaint against her with the Amugi Guild. She thought that when someone committed Togo's crimes against him, one should at least make a complaint. Didn't the instructor think so? She really didn't like this conversation. She had gone too far. Soo-jung didn't understand why she should talk to her. Perhaps she should just kill them all here on the spot. The balloon instructor knows this girl has a personal grudge against her, but this time she went over the top. Shahar even thought it was about that guy named Sunmung Hak. He heard that Soo-jung has a crush on him. The woman screamed for her to shut her mouth. Soo-hyuk couldn't even imagine that it was a fight over a man. How could she even provoke a serious conflict over trivial jealousy? The orb instructor told her that the guild wouldn't be able to protect her forever. She better apologize and end this conflict before it's too late. Soo-jung angrily wondered what the instructor would do in case she didn't stop all this. Would she really plan to kill her? Of course, she won't resort to murder, but make sure that Soo-jung will answer to the law. She became even more angry, not realizing who this elven woman was to accuse her like that. This woman began to release a dark and sinister energy. The boys guessed it was that dark art. She was going to attack the 8th group as well as the instructor, but it's too late to do anything about it now. She was able to mirror this dark art with ease. Soo-jung just couldn't understand how she could do all this with such ease, but she can't back down now because she's come too far. It's all or nothing. And she won't kill Soo-jung because she's too noble. She ordered the 3rd team to kill them now. They must tear their opponents apart. The boys certainly didn't expect such an order from the instructor. At the confusion of the 2 subordinates, the instructor asked if they didn't want to join the Amuga Guild. They can at least maim those kids or even chop off their limbs. She just wants results. They were obliged to follow her orders, so they went into battle. There was only a confident smile on Instructor Shahar's face. That certainty really pissed her off. She really wanted to see the look on her face when her recruits tore the 8th team to shreds. Soo-hae noticed that 2 of the team were a warrior and an archer. The last member of their team tore his clothes, after which his body began to transform in size. Soo-hyuk agreed to take on this pig and the archer. The 2 of them should keep the swordsman for a while. He waited until his opponent came right up to him, because he wanted to crush him like a bug. The huge man struck, but luckily the protagonist was able to bounce back from that blow, after which Soo-hyuk landed behind him. Of course he didn't like the nimble little rat. Picking the right moment, Soo-hyuk used the Iron Fist technique, Fist of Destruction. The man started spitting up blood. His entire body was trembling. Soo-hyuk thought he wasn't a bad fighter. After all, he had even withstood his punch. That creep is too slick, so he decided to engage in another plan. He gave a signal to Chae-young. The girl took aim, talking about how she knew everything without him. She released an arrow that traveled straight towards the protagonist with lightning speed. He thought they were able to defeat Soo-hyuk, as if he deserved it. Afterward, they saw that the arrow had crashed straight into the ground. The transformed man heard Soo-hyuk's voice asking where he was looking. In flight, it hit him right on the head. The man had fallen and was now unconscious. Chae-young, who was puzzled, couldn't even believe that Lee Jun-wook had been defeated with just one punch. Soo-hyuk looked at her intimidatingly, indicating that it was now her turn. Her whole body began to tremble and she screamed to stay back. At the same time, the girl was trying to take aim. He used the wind technique to avenge Jang-hyuk, after which the girl was also lying on the ground unconscious. Sounds like the guy's a little too much power. Soo-hyuk heard the pleas for him to be spared as well. Chan-hek's eyes even glowed threateningly. The man began to explain that they didn't want to do it, and they were forced to do it by the witch. Soo-hyuk stopped his partner's hand, trying to calm him down. He explained that the man in front of him was human, not some monster. Jang-hyuk immediately came to his senses and also gave thanks. Now the entire 3rd team was defeated. Soo-jung couldn't believe it either. This sight impressed her so much that she fell to the ground. The orb instructor looked joyfully at her opponent's defeat. Yi-young was impressed. Baekdu-san Guild, the guild vice president, whose name was Im Se-yul, was told that the 3rd and 8th team had fought. He hopes everyone present realizes what they are now dealing with. There was a fight between the recruits, and from the video, it looks like it was a serious fight. Of course, Shahar and Soo-jung were present in this meeting. Normally, Instructor Shahar is the chairperson for this performance. But due to circumstances, Im Se-yul will assume this role. He was sad that he had to remove the 3rd team recruits from the course. But their fault was not so great that they needed to be dismissed. The instructor of the 11th team, Lee Sang-wook, said that one of the recruits incapacitated the entire 3rd team. His actions may seem overkill, but Im Se-yul sees it as necessary self-defense. Chujong, who didn't understand what self-defense was about, jumped up. The 8th team wasn't injured in the slightest, and her students were now in intensive care. The man kindly told the Black Cloud Witch of the Amuga Guild that she was now responsible for the whole event. She had pushed the recruits' foreheads together just for petty jealousy. She was very hung up on those words, but she didn't know what to say to that. He has assumed the authority of a judge in this case, so you have to watch your expressions. The man appealed to Mr. Chairman, saying that this is a blatant violation of subordination. Will he leave all this unanswered? But, of course, he's not going to let this matter rest, which is why he's called a meeting. They're going to vote. Only one recruit is the primary culprit for this incident, namely Yang Soo-hyuk from the 8th team. This recruit is not an easy one, and he has some outstanding talent. That was pretty interesting. He told those who were in favor of punishing Yang Soo-hyuk to raise their hands. But everyone gathered here was silent, and they didn't even raise their hands. Im Se-yul didn't understand what was wrong with them at all. Why they were as if they had water in their mouths. Apparently, other than Lee Sang-wook, the director of the Young-ho Guild, no one wants Yang Soo-hyuk to be punished. In that case, they will now discuss Instructor Shahar's proposal. The instructors suggested that the position of chief instructor should be resigned, and that Im Se-yul should take over the position. Most of the instructors raised their hands, indicating that they agreed. In that case, Instructor Shahar is now a regular instructor in this program. Unless this seemed too light a sanction, she is also required to donate 100 million won to the association. Im Se-yul asked Instructor Shahar if she had any objections. The instructor replied that she did not, and also mentioned that this bout was unfair, so she accepts her punishment. Soo-jong couldn't believe that a demotion and a 100 million won fine were all punishment. She got off too easy. However, the man considers this sufficient punishment. Is the instructor against it? Instructor Soo-jung thought it was just clowning around. The Amuga Guild was just being poured mud, and they were silent. But no one wanted to interfere with this conversation. It seems to him that the Witch of the Black Cloud is completely oblivious, and believes that intrigue will not be held accountable. The woman completely failed to watch her language and called the chairman a bastard. He tapped the table, asking if she even realized where she was now. Did she really think they should be intimidated by the name of this guild? Training recruits is of strategic importance to Korea's national security. In addition, there is no profession more important than protecting the world. And now Soo-jung is ruining the country's strategic human resource because of personal grudges. Therefore, he declared that the Black Cloud Witch and the Amugi Guild were suspended from the government's recruit training program for 3 years. She didn't understand who he was to forbid them anything. He introduced himself as the chief instructor of the 56th recruit training program. The man inquired if they should at least vote on the matter. Now Korea is a democracy after all, so let them vote on the side. Which guild will they stand up for? Baekdu-san or Imugi? Baekdu-san has the first place among the guilds, and Imugi is only in 3rd place. Looks like he just bet on the wrong horse. Imugi looks like the end of the table. This meeting was tense. They had never seen Im Se-yul so angry before. Now it was unclear what would happen to the Amuga Guild. Suddenly, the protagonist heard that he was mentioned in the meeting. It was natural, because one person alone was able to deal with the 3rd team. He, moreover, had high characteristics. Someone even wanted to invite him to their guild before others took him away. And Young noticed that this guy really made a lot of noise. Everyone was talking about him now. Soo-hyuk wondered what had happened at the meeting. Anyway, he has to continue his training. But it's nice to see that he has achievements now. A little while later, he noticed that training and raiding in portals had made him significantly stronger. Now he should invoke the art of connecting heaven and earth. Heaven and earth are joined by one thread. Thus they become one, though separate. 3 elements, 1 essence. Energy emanates from Danjong and circulates through the Ren and Du meridians. This is the technique of the Great Gate County. It's difficult, but he's done this before in Hwang country, so he should be able to do it. Now the meridian Ren and Du are completely unlocked, and all impurity is expelled from the spiritual body. And now he is at the peak of his powers. The system reported that he had gained knowledge of secret martial arts. He had mastered a rank 5 martial art called the Heaven and Earth Unification Art. This martial art could be developed, and his body had undergone a transformation. The quest for change had begun. The user's body has undergone a transformation, a state of unity. Its energy reserve is now divided into 3 parts: upper, middle, and lower, Dan Tian. The storehouse is divided according to the principle of power and energy. The higher his energy, the greater its density. This was his first really big move. A little later, the 8th team went on the raid again. A monster appeared from the ground. Su Hyuk has cultivated one of the strongest martial arts of the Hwang country, the art of connecting heaven and earth. And now he must bring back his movement techniques. The 8th group as well as the instructor were attacked by a monster. Su Hyuk used the Iron Fist technique, an unbreakable will. The guy was satisfied with the carry of this strike. But unfortunately, it took too much energy. There was 42% of QE energy left out of 100. He may not have mastered the technique perfectly yet, but he decided to give it a try anyway. The system reported that he had discovered a new technique, a level 55 martial art called the 8 hieroglyphics step. He approached the monster and struck it with his fist. Due to the force of the blow, the monster flew back a couple of meters. Yi-young noticed that their commander was on a roll today. Jang Hyuk thought that he would really never catch up to him. Shahar noticed that he was moving more deftly and not wasting energy. Could he have become so skillful in just a few minutes? New monsters have emerged from beneath the ground. Su Hyuk immediately paid attention to them and deftly began to evade their attacks. The guy engaged his blood demon fist and started hitting points on the monsters' bodies, after which he engaged in a bloody explosion. The monsters his hands touched exploded, but some of the corpses were still lying on the sand. He looked at the remaining corpses and realized he had killed all the monsters. He looked at his team and laughed awkwardly while Jang Hyuk and Baek Yi-young remained silent. 2 weeks of training in the portals flew by. Im Esayul praised the recruits for their excellent work. All teams except the fools from the 3rd team passed the course to the end. It's happened before, but very rarely. But this flood of recruits has shown outstanding results. Shahar praised the boys. Now no one can call them just small recruits. Their successes were known to everyone, and they would be sought after by the best guilds. They are now free to choose their future path. However, as their instructor, she has something to tell them. Right now, they have no fame or recognition. But it is an honor to protect humanity from a threat. She hopes they make choices they won't regret in the future. That was the end of her farewell speech, but she also added that they had a good job. Yi-young immediately cried and hugged the balloon instructor. If you didn't have the instructor's efforts, she wouldn't have been able to do so much, not being able to do so much. It was indeed a pleasure for her to meet these good folks. Shahar had been honored to accompany them up to this point. Yi-young asked if they would see the instructor again. She also asked if she had a smartphone. Shahar replied that if fate favored them, they would hear the branch tell them about her in the rustling wind. Yeon didn't understand what she meant by that. She was approached by Jang Hyuk, who replied that she was aware that he had a criminal record. The instructor said that for him to become awakened would be an act of restoring his honor. Shahar remembered her words perfectly, but the truth is, he had no honor at all. He had no honorable intentions. That Chok just wanted to make a lot of money. And he never even had in his mind what the instructor taught them. He could have made an honest living, but the guy was just taking the easiest path. He heard the words of the orb, which spoke of how in all the time he had known her, she had never once felt ashamed of the guy. The past cannot determine a person's future. He should remember that Jang Hyun passed Langdae. Now he had nothing to regret and no tears to shed. Shahar advised him to protect others, and that way he could redeem himself. She'll keep an eye on him. After that, she turned her attention to Su Hyuk. Su Hyuk considered it an honor that he was able to fight alongside his instructor. They shook hands, saying that they would meet on the battlefield. The day of Shahar's farewell was sunny, and now they are waiting to be registered as a hunter in the association. Awakened have a rank from 1 to 13. There is only 1 awakened 13th ranked and 5 12th ranked. These 6 make up the center of the entire Korean Defense Force. He was very curious to know what kind of people they were. Most rivers of steep don't even make it to the 1st rank. The man yawned and wanted to say, rank to Mr. Yang Su-hyuk. After which, he immediately woke up when he realized that Yang Su-hyuk was standing in front of him. He reported that the main character had a rank 6. There is a World 8 who are called the best representatives of the human race. They were the awakened ones who had reached the 13th rank. There was one very gifted warrior among them. At the end of his recruit training, when he was a little over 20 years old, he was immediately promoted to the 4th rank. A lone wolf who hasn't joined any guilds in all his time. He has a large number of portal cleanups to his credit. This man's name is Baek Moo-hawk. This was an unprecedented case in Korea. Even in the world, no one else could boast of such rapid development. That is, Su Hyuk's result broke Baek Moo-hawk's record. The association employee asked the guy to wait a little while. He would soon complete this registration and issue him a hunter's license. Su Hyuk didn't expect that there would be such strong hunters on the ground. The Alliance of Worlds, as far as he could remember, classified the capabilities of the human race as average. Elves were higher than humans in that capacity, And the Celestials, who lead the Alliance of Worlds, are the most powerful race in the universe. The enemy of the Alliance was a race of demons. And if humans faced the demons, then humanity would end. But right now, it's just useless speculation. Classifying the strength of the races are divided according to the standards of the celestial race. Earthlings are evolving at a rapid pace. This is happening much faster than the races of other worlds. Therefore, humans may well be able to pull ahead. An employee of the association told Mr. Yang Soo-hyuk that his license was ready. He can check it with this silver bracelet. The silver bracelet began to sparkle. A hologram of a picture of himself, as well as information, appeared in front of him. An employee of the association explained that these bracelets are made by dwarves, and enchantments are put on them by elves. And the protagonist admitted that it was really impressive. The worker asked, "That's all, or was there anything else he wanted to ask?" He immediately turned back when he heard someone calling him. It was a man with red hair and a yellow suit. Soo-hyuk looked over and didn't even remember knowing the guy, so he asked if they knew each other. The man with the fiery red hair remembered that he had forgotten to introduce himself. He apologized for that. After that, he showed his gold bracelet. This man's name is Oh Shin-woo, and he's rank 11. The news that the man had an 11th rank shook him. Oh Shin-woo extended his hand, saying that it was a pleasure to meet this young man. He then suggested that they talk in a more private setting. They went to Mr. Oh Shin-woo's office. The man told his guest to change seats while he brought something very tasty. At the same time, he was loudly humming something to himself under his nose. Soo-hyuk didn't really like that it was too noisy and loud. He pointed to the heater and ordered it to turn on. It had gotten colder in the past few days, so he said this. Oh, Shin-woo was quite sensitive to the cold. Soo-hyuk didn't really care about it. But it was a little strange that this eccentric guy wanted to use a heater in October. After which he handed the protagonist a glass of coffee. Foreigners are crazy about this drink. Oh Shin-woo likes it too. Didn't Soo-hyuk like it? And the protagonist replied that it was fine, although he didn't understand what was wrong with instant coffee. Oh Shin-woo doesn't like to have someone else make his coffee. His assistants are already busy, so there's no need to distract them with such small requests. He's not armless. Soo-hyuk took a sip and asked the man what he wanted to talk about. Oh Shin-woo noticed that this guy doesn't like to go around at all. In fact, he's really into it. He bluntly asked if Mr. Yang Soo-hyuk had thought about joining the Awakened Association. The main character replied that he wouldn't want to do that. Oh Shin-woo remarked that he was pretty straightforward. Hunters don't usually seek association, so he decided to ask the next question. Yang Soo-hyuk immediately assumed that he wanted to ask if the guy had thought about joining the guild. But he wasn't really interested in that. He marveled that this feast had the ability to read minds. But it's really just a hunch. Soo-hyuk added that he has no plans to emigrate either. Oh Shin-woo immediately jumped in, saying that he loves this attitude. He adores this beautiful Korea too. Soo-hyuk surprises him with his abilities. He is a man who has recently come out of a long coma. The man was curious to know what his purpose was. If he can do it, he will be able to fulfill Soo-hyuk's request. The protagonist really hoped that he would be able to get answers from Oh Shin-woo, who is the vice president of the Awakened Association. He wondered how Yeon was doing, as well as Jang Hyuk. The guy looked at his phone and saw that he had received new messages. There was a picture of both Yeon and Jang Hyuk, who reported that they had reached the 3rd rank. He smiled, realizing that these two were definitely not going to be bored. He wrote a message of congratulations and hoped things would pick up for them. However, suddenly Soo-hyuk heard something. He turned towards the source of that strange noise. This really bothered him, so he decided to check it out. He arrived to a concerned group of people. Space itself began to change and a portal appeared. Soo-hyuk didn't understand why this portal appeared here. After that, a siren sounded to announce that a portal had been detected. Citizens should not panic and should go to the shelter located at Shincheon subway station. And also this portal, presumably of rank 5. People began to be evacuated to a shelter. But already 10 people had been pulled right into the portal. The man tried to calm the panicked people by talking about how the Awakened had already arrived.